was important to understand for us as kids that he understood his responsibility in the public eye to carry yourself well, to represent your culture well. Us as his kids didn't really understand that until we lost him, really. That's the irony, right? Like, you kind of don't know what you have until it's gone. It was a bit like that, you know, Dad's kind of steering the wheel of the ship when he was here, and we kind of just supporting roles to him. And now it's a little bit of, what direction are you going in now that Dad's not here, and you've got your own family, and you're kind of, you know, trying to steer your own ship. What do you get into?
This episode of A Beacon of Hope is proudly brought to you by Campfire Studios. To find out more, visit campfirestudios.co.nz. 2, 3, 4. A Beacon of Hope is a weekly podcast that shines a light on the human spirit and explores the power of hope in our lives. Join me, Will Fleming, as I talk to people from all walks of life about where they find hope and how they use it to navigate life's challenges.
Be good, be safe, and be happy.
In this episode of A Beacon of Hope, we sit down with Jordan Tuigamala for a conversation about the power of hope and resilience. This podcast is grounded in the sadness of losing a loved one and the path we all must walk in our efforts to put into action all of the lessons of the past for the future. Thanks so much, Jordan, for coming on the podcast and talking with me about hope, love, loss. Appreciate your time. Your dad would be so proud.
Your perspective changes a lot, and you realize just how valuable those bits of information they were trying to pass down to you were.
Like, are they like little things? Can you think of things like, you know, something in the mannerism sometimes, or
100%? I think it's all the, like, the little things, like, you know, when we would get upset at Dad for, you know, obviously being who he was, he would get recognized in some places and then get stopped for conversation. And, you know, sometimes if we're out for dinner, it take us like half an hour to even get to the place because he's stopping to talk to someone here and someone there. And, you know, when we were younger, we're kind of just like, man, this is annoying. We can't even go and have a family dinner and just get to the place, or you know, it's always time consuming to do something. But, you know, packed into those moments, I realized, like, there were lessons there. So, you know, Dad would always take time for everyone. Like, it didn't matter who it was. He would take time out to get to know them, talk to them. And then, you know, what seemed like an annoying thing for us back then, like, we look at it now and we just think, man, that was such a big quality for him, was giving people time, talking to people genuinely, and just like, that was, one of his qualities. And now we kind of think, man, how cool was it that Dad did that for people? And especially in a day and age where, like, we're in a rush all the time to get to this place, do that thing, whatever else. And, you know, he kind of had those old school qualities of, you know, take time to be with people and talk to them and get to know people and make people feel like they're worth your time as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, like little things like that. So
it's they're gifts, bro? One of the things that I've been trying to process, what has it been, just over a year now since my mum passed, and actually that kind of birthed this podcast. You know, it's like when I really sat down to think about it, I was like, of course I miss her, but we're cool. There was no unsaid things or things I was trying to resolve. I feel like she completed her path, you know. She filled me up full of love, full of optimism, full of hope, and I only realized that when she was gone, because I kind of thought I was conducting myself in the world as a positive person and trying to be honest, you know, which is confronting when you see different things going on. Hey, you know, like, I don't understand war. I don't understand pain, poverty, and I don't even understand people who can, I guess, have more nefarious outcomes on others, assholes basically. And it's been one of those things that I've only tried to better understand since she passed. And that's why I was thinking like it's going to be a unique catch up with you, because all in the space of a couple of years, we've gone from kind of being fathers of young kids, starting our own families, in the world we live in today. And then these rocks have been kind of taken from us, and we're still having to progress forward. I guess the one difference that I should highlight with you, like I said before we started recording, is you've kind of got to share your dad with everybody. And I wonder what was that like growing up for you, kind of knowing that he wasn't just your dad, there was a part of him that had to be a little bit of Inga for everybody, eh?
Yeah, and I think it was important to understand for us as kids that he understood his responsibility that came with being in the public eye, being a rugby player and having some influence. When you have that, you also have a responsibility, to carry yourself well, to represent your culture well, to all of these things that you carry, that comes along with all of that stuff. Us as kids didn't really understand that until we lost them, really. And that's the irony, right? Like you kind of don't know what you have until it's gone, type of thing, So for us, it's one of those things that we look back on and we're like, there was probably a lot of things that we took for granted, but I think like a lot of people go through that. But if we can take the learnings from it and improve, our situations, our life, and those around us, then I think it wasn't like, it wasn't in vain, right? So in the end, you still end up getting out of it what your father or whoever it is tried to instill in you, because you do take the learnings, even though they've passed on. You still take the learnings and you do something with it.
Because we're all quite funny about the topic of death, eh? It's a taboo, and there's different processes. But one of the things that I've felt for me is it like gave me a reason to grow up a little bit. Because I don't know what it was like for you, but my mum was someone I could always call, and that's cool. But this rite of passage to make your own decisions, to back yourself, how's that been for you? Did it give you a reason to be like, oh man, I got to do this now? Yeah,
I think when you have like a safety net, and that's what like a lot of people find their safety net in their parents, right? That's someone that they can rely on. They go back to if it gets rough. But when you lose that, I think a lot of the times the only thing you can do from that is take the learnings of what was, what did your parents teach you? What did they try and instill in you to try and equip you for life? And then use that to navigate your way through different things that you come across in your life. There's, people go through a lot. But, if you're trying to navigate your way through things and you use what your parents have tried to instill in you, a lot of the times you come out of it the other end better off. So
how's your mum? Because I asked that because people who knew your dad, especially if they were invited to come over, your mum would kind of ride shotgun with them.
Yeah.
And, nudge a little bit and, hey, do this and watch out for that. And quite a unsung hero a little bit in his journey, eh?
100%. I think I always say, Mum was Dad's biggest supporter because she was there through all the hard times. She was there behind, behind the scenes when and when it got tough, like a lot of people, they see the success in in his career, but they don't realize, there was some times where Dad was so close to chucking it in. When they went over to England, we all went over to England. It was hard on Dad. Like culture shock. Obviously it's a lot colder over there, so climate shock as well. And then I think just the whole the change in his training and the professionalism over there was a lot different from what he was used to, and he was honestly so close to coming back to New Zealand,
really,
and packing it all in, because obviously he's on the other side of the world. He's used to having this tight-knit family that he grew up with, and then all of a sudden he's on the other side of the world. He doesn't have his family support people that he's used to, and then all the other changes as well. But thank goodness, Mum was there to be a real support for him and get him through a lot of those times. And same with his friends. There was Apollo Perolini, Afi Lelunga, a whole bunch of other people I can name, Epi, Etu, Sokai, all these guys that came over, during his time over there. They ended up coming over to support him, because it was a big shock for him, and he was so close to just packing it all in. So.
Absolutely. And I guess carving a path, it's cool to think your dad carved a path for so many, but it would have had an impact on him trying to carve that path, when he's coming home stressed and it's not going well. Of course, it's like you're trying to suss out where you fit in and how you can help. But yeah, it must have been tricky.
Yeah, it was actually. It's because you're, I don't want to say isolated, but because you're just away from your family and just your network of people that you're used to. It is hard to try and figure out where you fit. Like, I always joke about it, when we were growing up as kids over in England, spot the brown kid, because we were the only brown kids in the school. And so we felt like we stuck out like a sore thumb over there. But then we came back to New Zealand and we were the brown kids with British accents over here. So we stuck out like a sore thumb over here. So it was just, trying to find where we fit in was a big one. In some ways it made our family closer, because we did a lot of traveling when Dad was playing rugby, and the one constant was our family. So, our environment may change. We might move here, or go to another place over there or whatever, but our family was always the constant. So it did bring us together a bit. And, I spent a lot of years just trying to fit in. I tried to change my English accent when I came back here. I tried to get out of my Geordie accent and try and live out a Kiwi childhood. But you end up realizing that, the place that I fit in the most is in my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't realize it at the time. You just want to fit in with everyone else.
Absolutely.
So.
And I guess he wouldn't have thought like all of these other, not consequences, but effects would happen. And how has that influenced you as a dad? Is one of the outcomes that you kind of just want to have stability, or can you feel how it's influenced you?
When I look back at it, I think Dad was working with what he had, and I also come to realize that, he was only human. And so I think a lot of times we can put our parents up on a pedestal because it's, your parents, so you expect so much out of them. But when you become a parent yourself, you realize your kids are also going to hold you up on a pedestal, but you're only human, and so are your parents. So, it's funny because my dad always used to say, "You'll understand when you're a father. Yeah. You'll understand what I'm talking about." And he couldn't have been more right. I'm going through some of these things in my life now, and some of the the lessons that he would teach me is burning in my mind. So like, you know, I'll do something with my baby girl now, and I can hear his voice in the background, like saying like, you know, told you so, son, you know, a little bit. So, but yeah.
What a journey. Where did your love for boxing come from? Was that something quite young?
It actually, that's an interesting one, because I wasn't drawn to it straight away.
True.
But I was put off of rugby.
Yeah, because I guess everyone was like, you got to play.
Yeah. Everyone was kind of like asking me, do you play rugby? You know, this and that. And I gave it a go when I was an intermediate, I think, and I was absolutely useless. So, like I steered away from rugby altogether. I didn't like the pressure. The other thing was like being in team environments. Like, I felt so much pressure of not letting the team down that, it almost like paralyzed me. You know, I just, couldn't perform under that kind of pressure. But then, being in an individual sport like boxing, you know, if I get hurt, it's only me that's getting hurt. If I get knocked out, it's only me that's, you know, suffering for making mistakes. And I, even though that kind of sounds a bit weird, because the consequences sound a lot harsher when, you know, for your mistakes in boxing as opposed to, you know, like team sports. But, it was something that I was drawn to because I didn't want to let anyone else down.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people could relate to that in some way, but, that's kind of, I gave it a go. I gave boxing a go to increase my fitness. And then I started realizing like, oh, you know, my mistakes don't actually affect anyone else except for me. So that's what drew me to boxing in the end. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And like, you know, I guess the thing is most people can't imagine that ever getting hit in the face, but that's kind of part of the art, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they say that it, you know, the whole idea of boxing is to hit and not get hit. But I mean, you can see from my nose that it's not always the case. So, it's one of those sports that mirrors life quite well. Like, you know, having to overcome adversity. You know, it's character building as well. When it gets tough, you know, bite down on your mouth guard, and you have to really like, you have to really dig deep. And so I think, you know, I like that aspect of it, you know, because I could see so much of life qualities in the sport.
Yeah.
And I could relate to it. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess I'd attempt in this podcast to go a little bit deeper because like, and I guess what I mean by that is where's hope and optimism found when you're boxing? Are you working things out personally when you're training? Is it giving you time to check out from some other things going on in life?
Yeah, I think it actually, you know, boxing's a good outlet. You know, if you have a lot of built up energy, whether it's good or bad, you know, like you can let it out on the bag or on, you know, on the pads, and you feel good for letting out that energy and kind of centering yourself again. And I guess, you know, a lot of people can see it as finding hope when they're able to, you know, level themselves back out again, because it's in those moments where you're, you know, everything is heightened because you're stressed out, or you're, you know, there's something going on in your life that's you just don't know how to handle it quite right, and if you can let out your energy in a sport like boxing, you know, you center yourself a bit, and you're a bit clearer to be able to see things a bit better. That's kind of where some people could find hope in boxing.
I'll just like to highlight that because I think it never really gets talked about. It's just like do a sport or do a physical activity, and maybe at a stretch they'll say, oh, you know, you might clear your mind, but I think it's a bit deeper than that, eh? You know, some therapeutic stuff going on there too. And I guess the other question I had for you is like, since we are fathers, you know, one of the tensions I feel is take the bit of adversity you talked about. I think we shouldn't overstate. It would have been quite traumatic for you to try and have that thought of, how the hell do I change my accent? You know, there's probably some bullying or whatnot that comes along, or at least feeling different already is horrible when you're young. You know, you're just trying to fit in. That may have made you a stronger person today. And what's that right level? You know, I'm thinking about for my kids, like, man, how much do you have to let them fail so that they're ready for life versus trying to, you know, keep that path clear from everything. I got a son who's 18 next year.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that dude's not ready.
Right.
But if I think back to when I was 18, I was no way ready either.
Yeah.
You know, I remember at 19 going to play in rugby in Scotland for my uncle's team. And I lost my wallet on the first day, and it had all my euros in it. And I was like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Of course, what I did was call home.
That's it.
Because I was lucky enough to have that, you know, I could use that token. But yeah, could have probably used a bit more resilience building earlier. Yeah, what's your thoughts on doing it for your kids, providing that level? Yeah.
Trying to find that balance that you mentioned of you know, how much do you step in to help your young one, and how much do you let them learn on their own? You know, I don't know if there is, you know, like a perfect answer for that, but I think if you're able to let your kids build resilience, you know, and try and find the best way that works for both them and yourself. Yeah, I think you're on the right path. You know, not everything. It's not like a one size fits all type of thing. You know, like you know, some people are just born with, you know, like the ability to do certain stuff, and then some just need, you know, some guidance on it. And I think if you can find, like, you know, if you have, you know, more than one child, you have to find what works for that child and what works for the next one and the next one, you know, and kind of tailor your approach for that. It doesn't mean that you're treating them differently because you love them differently. It's more you're tailoring it because you love them so much. So you're almost finding what works best for this child, and how do I tailor their approach so that they get the best outcomes, you know, as much as possible. So,
how many kids and how you are brothers and sisters? How many of you?
So there's 4 of us.
And where are you situated?
I'm the eldest.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you had some of that. Hey, look after everyone else.
A little bit, but to be honest, they probably looked after me more than I looked after them. Because I think, yeah, out of all of us, I'm the smallest. You know, we have one sister. Her name's Salote, and then my youngest brother is Salika, and then Vice is underneath me. They're all bigger than me. We all box, and so it was really interesting when we would come to trainings, because we would spar and then swap partners, and depending on where you are in the lineup, you'd end up sparring. You know, we would end up sparring each other. So, you know, I'd like to say that I was the protective one, but I think, you know, they were the ones that were protecting me, really. So
yeah,
looking after the older one.
Did you know? I guess one of the things that you know, I've tried to frame this chat as like a couple people like we are, and you know, have some similarities. But I guess one of the main differences is, you know, for you and your siblings, and I guess your mum and stuff. That whole funeral process with your dad, it was in the media, it was all over that stuff. Like, what's that like? Because I had to mourn in my own way, but there wasn't people interested in Sir Michael Jones walking around and whatnot. For you, do you think that, what am I trying to ask here? You haven't had to bottle anything extra up? Were you able to not carry too much extra trauma?
Because we kind of grew up with you know, Dad kind of always had attention on him. So it wasn't foreign to us when it came about. It's just that it was the only new thing that was that we had to deal with was obviously losing Dad. So we kind of all reverted back to what we're used to, and it's kind of you know, we have this responsibility to represent Dad well, like, you know, so we kind of reverted back to that. So I guess in a way we kind of did bottle up a little bit. But we did have like all the family there, friends, and so, you know, for us, that was kind of where we started leaning into them a bit for support, because, you know, it was something that we've never had to obviously deal with, and didn't know exactly how to feel about things. Emotions were kind of all over the place. Things were, you know, were popping up on social media, and I guess it was hard to kind of escape it sometimes. Like, you know, we'd just try and get distracted by going on, you know, jumping online, and then something else pops up, and something else pops up, but that's just the nature of the world that we live in.
Yeah,
you know? So
true,
we just have to work with what we got, and just remember that, you know, there's plenty of, you know, everyone in this world goes through this grieving process when they lose someone. So yeah, we just kind of had to realize that we weren't alone in it, but we just try to handle it as best we could.
Isn't it a weird thing? Because when you imagine someone else losing their parent, you feel sad, and obviously you feel sad for yourself, but you were there, so you know that there's something natural about it, that everyone has to go through that. And in some ways I feel a bit relieved that I know that's coming for my friends one day, and that they will get through it, but that you've had to get through it. There's something, I guess, a growth thing there, you know. I get the sense that, you know, it was like the Inga show was on the road, and, you know, there was different chapters of it, and that the kind of goal had to be follow that ship, you know. And I guess what's your ship? What do you hope to build now? You know, what do you hope that when you carry the legacy on in terms of your own story, when you pass that to your little ones, what do you hope you move towards?
Yeah, I think it was a bit like that. You know, Dad's kind of steering the wheel of the ship when he was here, and we kind of just supporting roles to him. And now it's a little bit of you know, what direction are you going in now that Dad's not here, and you've got your own family, and you're kind of, you know, trying to steer your own ship. What do you get into? And I think for me, it's giving back to the community. And I know it's like, you know, it can sound like a cheesy thing, right? Like giving back to the community. Yeah, that's something that, like almost like a blanket statement that people use, but it's something that, you know, was a legacy of my dad. Like everyone used to like talk to about how he always gave back to his community, loved his community, and it's something that I want for myself as well. You know, I want to impact and influence my community where I can, because, you know, once it's all said and done, you know, people remember you by that kind of stuff. You know, like they won't remember the cars that come and go, or the, you know, and Dad is a classic example of, you know, he started off with nothing, built up, you know, fame and built up some, you know, a good career and had money, then, you know, lost it all again, and then, you know, slowly build up to, like, you know, where he was comfortable, and the one thing that always remained for him was giving back, and you know, for me, if he can go through those highs and lows, and the important thing for him is still giving back, then, you know, and if that's the way that he's remembered, man, that's the way that I want to be remembered.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it is a bit of a. I was actually thinking about that a couple months ago. Like, you know, I was so used to supporting Dad and what he was doing, and now what is it that I'm looking to lead?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Absolutely. Like, there's no other way that you can actually take your own direction unless you have to let his one go, you know. And I think there's a balance there. You can take some of the things because you're your own person and with your own experiences, but yeah, it's, you know, no one likes to think about losing a parent, but there are some hidden gems in it. You know, one of the ones I always feel is like, man, it's now. It's now. Things can get ripped away really quick, you know? And I think the problem with a path carved for you is that you can get complacent, you know, especially with someone like your dad, which he leads it, you know, and it's like, let's all jump on. And I guess the thing that I've always been, from a slightly selfish point of view, it's like when I got to know him, he was actively trying to be healthier. You know, he was on that Odyssey mission, and that's something some of his pals and me brought into, which is like, yeah, man, kick the diabetes, you know, get off the sleep apnea machine and those parts that maybe weren't so well known. But even then, just because you got a big vision and goal doesn't mean you'll get there. And, you know, it's funny that you kind of, I know you, you know, in your boxing, because that's the kind of Rocky story too, right? That it's not all guaranteed and you got to work your butt off. And maybe one of the gifts is that it's a multi-generational thing, you know. Maybe what your name will be known for is, you know, people living a full life mentally, physically. I mean, that's something nice to aim towards. I guess the other thing I wanted to do is, because your dad was so well covered in media, one thing was annoying for me, I did lots of recordings with my mum, especially when she got sick, but I didn't record her. I haven't got a recording that I can find where she's like, I love you.
Right.
And it annoys me because I could have just said, hey, Mum, say you love me, you know. She said it to me so many times, which I'm sure your dad would have said, but I wonder if that's recorded somewhere. I might go back through some of my footage to see if I've prompted him to talk like that. But let's not leave that to chance for your kids, for your family. So while we're recording, I wanted to know if you could just say you love them. So regardless what happens in this crazy world, it's recorded somewhere. Is that okay?
Yeah, 100%. Robbie, this is my daughter. Her name is Robbie. She's named after my wife's father, so my father-in-law. His name's Rob. We added the little bit at the end to make it a little bit more girly. So Robbie May Rose, yeah, she's, how old is she now? She's 15 months. Put me on the spot there. If you're listening to this, Robbie, yeah, Dad's not too good with his maths. But yeah, Robbie, I love you, and when you hear this back in the future, yeah, just know that I'm only human and I'm trying my best. But it's it's an honor to be your father, and I hope I do right by you. So yeah,
awesome, bro. Thanks, man.
Thank
I know it's a bit weird, but you know, the good stuff sometimes is weird, and it just like your dad sat there and we did recording, and I think, like, you know, I don't know if I'm religious, but I definitely am spiritual, you know. I think that there's some little energies happening, whether, you know, here or there, and I'd like to think that a place like this captures a bit of essence, and so that you get to come back and there's a little bit of, I think that's where hope and optimism is. It's thinking something might be like that, you know, and it gives us a bit of strength to attack the next challenge, because we're not going to be short of challenges in this world, eh?
100%.
So just want to say thanks, bro, for, you know, coming on, and hope I didn't open up any two sore wounds that we both carry. What about if people are interested to follow your journey? You're quite active on social media. If they're interested to maybe explore, boxing not from just a physical point of view, but from the kind of, I guess, holistic.
A lot of our stuff on the boxing is done on Instagram, so you can find us on JT Boxing. That's my handle, but so it's JTBXNG. But yeah, a lot of the times we're just sharing content around our classes and trying to spread some positivity through the sport itself. So if you get a chance to come and have a look at what we're doing, we just started running some classes as well over at Swanson in Ranui. So it's slowly building, but it's good to kind of get amongst the community there, and they're keeping me honest. They're learning quickly, so I'm having to keep my hands up literally. But thank you for having me on.
Awesome.
And I really appreciate you guys sharing your time. So
choice, bro. Well, we'll catch up again, and thanks for being our beacon of hope today.
Cheers, my man. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
This episode of A Beacon of Hope is proudly brought to you by Campfire Studios. Campfire Studios is an impact-led organisation amplifying the voices of Māori and Pasifika communities via podcasting and video content. To find out more, visit campfirestudios.co.nz. 2, 3, 4. Thank you for tuning in to this frequency of hope in our podcast today. If you found value from this episode and want to hear more, I would love it if you could follow, subscribe, and rate our show. By doing so, you will increase the frequency of the Beacon of Hope. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, please take a moment to hit the follow or subscribe button and leave a rating and review. I truly appreciate your support and feedback, and it helps us make our podcast even better. Thank you.
Be good. Be safe. And be happy. Yeah. Sounds like that song, doesn't it? Be happy.
All right, Mama, we'll stop there, right?
Yeah, okay. All right.